if I'm not mistaken, that part of one of the pieces of emergent strategies is remembering to do that. You know?
I'm laughing because I'm just like, this is so awesome. Like, I needed that breath and I needed that acknowledgement. And I'll say I just moved to Durham, so I'm on Lumbee territory over here, speaking to you all. I'm learning the ways over here, and I feel moved. I feel so moved to ever be, you know, like I feel like I go from event to event and there's no breath. And I'm always telling myself, like, breathe, but I'm like, all right, we can breathe together. Let's remember that. And this is giving me a hint or two of some of the ways that you all are practicing emergent strategy, practicing the small is all, you know, it's like the small breath, it seems small, but like acknowledging the land is actually massive for us. But that practice. And I'd love to ask you all to share with me a little bit around what you're doing, these practices and other practices you're doing that are helping you build relationships at a large scale. And already I can feel, you know, I think a lot of times with unions, the history is so transactional, right? It's like we are negotiating, transacting, doing this. And yet there's another way, which I can feel in you all, which is like weaving something together that is really connective tissue and member-based. So I'd love to ask if you would share with me any of those things that you're practicing. How are you building with each other?
Well, I can start with I'm so glad that you're here, Adrienne Marie Brown. We feel honored to have you here. I know for many of us, we get involved with CFA because of relationships with individual folks who bring us in. And I know that we have, I'm just going to give you a real short example. I had no involvement with CFA at San Diego State, where I am a professor. The leaders didn't look like me. They didn't really address any of my issues, but CFA sent some folks to our campus, and it was sort of a diversity luncheon meeting. And I met Cecil Canton, who was the AVP for what the council was called then, Affirmative Action. And, you know, he listened to me for a while, and then he said, well, you know, you can complain or you can join one of our statewide meetings. So I came to the African American caucus, and all of a sudden I saw people like me. I had relationships. I mean, I just started relationships. And so getting involved in the caucus was how I sort of moved into being involved in CFA. And I think many of us do that. So in terms of the small, we really privilege our caucuses and committees. Those are ways and places where folks can have that one-on-one. It's not sort of top down. You actually talk to each other. And interestingly enough, and I'm going to stop, but interestingly enough, where we're at now in CFA is really a product of what happened in those caucus and committee meetings. These, you know, all kinds of identity caucuses that we have. And we also listen to our folks in that we may not know all of the identities that need to be represented as a caucus, and they come to us and say, we want to start this kind of caucus or that kind of caucus. So I'll stop there for a minute.
I love that. Are there other thoughts, Margarita?
Yeah, thank you, Charles, for starting us off with that conversation, because I know for myself as well, Cecil and Jose Cintron and others were major players in bringing me in. And their framing, particularly Cecil's, was, you know, as he shared with you all, I'm sure as well, was, you know, we have to be engaged at that personal level and know each other at that personal level, because that's the humanity that we see in each other. If we can see the humanity in one another, then the organizing that we're in, the organizing that we're doing is not about just transactions, but about the livelihood and spirit of each other moving forward. And I think about the experience that we all are in right now with COVID and the pandemic, and how devastating it has been on all of us, one way or another. We have been impacted. But I also have seen at the same time, simultaneously coupled with that, how as a union and us as a collective have reached out to each other, many of us that are on this Zoom right now, as well as to our members on our campuses, to really just say, how are you doing? What do you need? How can we be of support with each other? And I can't share enough how thankful people were, or how thankful I was, even myself, to have my siblings here in the union do that reach out to me, to others. And that is part of that process for us with the relationship building, but then what that can also, in the context of our union, lead to, because it's building that trust and building that framework to even do more with one another.
I love that. And I want to layer in another aspect of the question, which is, you know, in a moment like this, where there's so much external pressure, right? There's the pressures of COVID, there's the pressures of economy, there's the pressures of people being terrified to be in classes, but also knowing that it's much harder to learn apart. And then on top of that, you add this bargaining campaign that you're in, where it's like having to fight for your value, having to fight for, you know, having to fight to be seen. It's like, I want to be seen the way I know that I'm worth, you know, and the pressure of all that. Pressure is often the thing that breaks relationship or tests relationship. And so I'm really curious about how you're moving at depth that can sustain through moments like this, can sustain through the pressure that you're facing now.
I actually might want to speak a little bit to that. When you started talking about pressure sometimes being what breaks those relationships, I think that really just it struck me, because I was just thinking about last year that has been so intense with COVID and how much that's really challenged us. And you know, it hasn't always been.
Is that an actual bird on your shoulder?
Yes. Sorry. This is Genji, and he refused to be in the other room, so he's
of course. He's like, I can be on screen. Are you kidding me?
I know.
I bet that's a
He's
Leo bird. Awesome. Okay, sorry, continue.
It's all good. Yeah, you know, it's so funny. Like, I'm like, here's my comedy club, but like feeling all the feels. It's just so funny that it all comes together, like just the intensity of emotion also. It's just like, it's all like, we're just processing it all constantly, right? But yeah, last year was really flipping hard. And honestly, just like being so committed to like standing up for the values that we feel like we need, you know, the rights, the respect, the justice, being so committed to it. It felt like such a breaking point on so many days. And so I really feel like there are times where I really have felt like we've been kind of going through a lot of like needs for change with our union of how we interact with one another. And it hasn't been, you know, I love like what Margarita and Charles are talking about, the kind of the history that has brought us in. And even in the last couple of years, I feel like the conversations have been intensifying, the growth moments have been increasing. Like we've just been kind of like in it, and we've been rumbling with a whole bunch of stuff. And it's been almost a breaking point, but then there's been like little moments of transformation where we're just talking in different ways too, like our agenda statement that Ale had dropped in the chat for us, you know, just trying to disrupt the patterns that we've been in and looking for new avenues to change.
I think another, I don't know, how do I want to say this? We are going through bargaining now. Some of us just left a bargaining meeting. And I think in terms of the proposals we presented proposals that demonstrate and show that we care about our members. And we've looked at our members and what they need in the work environment in ways that I don't think the union ever has before. And I think that's a way that we're trying to make sure that we are not interested just in transactions, that we are interested in improving the quality of our members' working lives. And I hope that we're going to be making history with these proposals, because we are really addressing some very deep and serious structural issues that our members experience every day. And just to play off, or not play off, but respond to some comments that Margarita and NICOLA have made, we have given each other a lot of love during this pandemic. I mean, we take the time to show that, because this work is hard, it's stressful, it's too much work. And we really always try and do that.
Thank you.
I want to invite Sharon in here.
You know, of course, right as you said that, Willie came to ask me if I want a piece of pizza. So I'm just saying, which I do not.
What'd you say?
I
you
said
said
no.
no.
I
Okay.
had something healthy earlier. But no, I'm
Okay.
thinking about this. I think last year was amazing. And that may just sound like a weird thing to say. Twin pandemics, dealing with intensive activism around systemic racism, anti-Black racism, dealing with COVID. But, you know, we're doing it. And to be part of something that is responsive to the most critical things we're facing is so affirming. What I love is that we can be our whole self here. You know, Willie can come disturb me for a minute. My daughter, who has grown up in CFA, can come and hand me my granddaughter, and I show her off to everybody, just like NICOLA's sharing the bird. You know, we can be our whole self. We can bring all of our shit and all of our joy, either one. And this, for me, really sustains us. And I think the practices we've engaged, and we're still working at it, right? Sometimes we have to get really worked up in all of our feelings to be able to say some stuff that needs to be said, and can just be so anxious about how is this going to land. But we're getting used to it. You know, we're really getting used to it. I think we are engaging these practices in a loving manner. And when we can come with our whole self and be received lovingly, we can do amazing things. You know, unfortunately, we have to deal with people who live in an alternate universe, which is where we've been at the bargaining table. They're in a whole other universe. They don't speak our language. They don't understand our language.
That's right.
You know, but we are sticking to our principles, and we're going to ride on those. We can do this. And I feel really good about this last year. Never have I probably had so much anxiety, except different times when I had death threats. But, you know, it was about, you know, are we going to live? Are we going to live through this, right? Fighting for Black Lives Matter. Are we as Black people going to live? Are we going to live through this? Can we survive this? But to come together and work together is such a joy. And to work with these people is just such a joy. And it is a joy to have you here.